Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen Bennett, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor. Now, only occasionally do you see changes announced that are truly seismic and of an historic nature. The Devolution Revolution is about to begin, so hold on to your seats. Now, the changes we discussed today are truly a revelation because the announcement by Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner of the first large-scale reorganisation of local government since 1974 is massive. And there's more. There's new strategic powers for mayors, new local transport systems, local control of rail networks, and frankly, much, much more than that. So, in this special pre-Christmas edition of the Grapevine, Dennis and I will take you through the key elements. So, Dennis, let's start with an overview of the main announcements.
Yes, of course, Helen. The government plans to deliver an ambitious first wave of local government reorganisation in this Parliament that would focus on two-tier areas and small, or what they describe as poorly performing, unitary councils. The White Paper also lays out proposals for new strategic authorities and greater powers for mayoral combined authorities. On reorganising two-tier and unitary authorities, the White Paper said, unitary councils can lead to better outcomes for residents, save significant money which can be reinvested in public services, and improve accountability with fewer politicians who are more able to focus on delivering for residents. And it added, this White Paper announces that we will facilitate a programme of local government reorganisation for two-tier areas and for unitary councils where there is evidence of failure or where their size or boundaries may be hindering their ability to deliver sustainable and high-quality public services. And to kickstart this programme, the government plans to request proposals from these councils before taking a phased approach to delivery. And this phased approach would take into account where reorganisation can unlock devolution, where areas are keen to move quickly, or where it can help address wider failings. And under these plans, the government is aiming for new unitary councils to cover areas with a population of 500,000 or more. Elsewhere, the government set out plans to legislate to introduce so-called strategic authorities and a statutory devolution framework. According to the document, strategic authorities would have a mandate to act strategically to drive growth, as well as support the shaping of public services, where strategic level coordination adds value in areas such as transport, employment, housing, planning, economic development, environment, health, and public safety. Now, the White Paper also noted that all strategic authorities will belong to one of two levels: foundation strategic authorities or mayoral strategic authorities. And the extent of devolved power depends on which category an authority will sit in. The documents describe foundation strategic authorities as including non-mayoral combined authorities and combined county authorities automatically, and any local authority designated as a strategic authority without a mayor. It said that mayoral strategic authorities will automatically include the Greater London Authority, all mayoral combined authorities, and all mayoral combined county authorities. So, what's the significance of these new tiers? Well, simply, those who meet specified eligibility criteria may be designated as established mayoral strategic authorities, and this unlocks further devolution, most notably access to an integrated financial settlement, the government added. And to enforce these provisions, the government also warned that it would legislate for a ministerial directive allowing Whitehall to create strategic authorities where local leaders have, after due time has been allowed, not been able to make progress. The White Paper, meanwhile, pledged to reset the relationship with local government, to give the sector more autonomy and put councils on the road to recovery. Now let's turn now to new budgets and new management powers. On this, the government added, we will provide multi-year settlements, updating the way we provide funding to local government, end micromanagement, and move to a meaningful partnership between central and local government. Now, elsewhere, the White Paper promised unprecedented powers and budgets for mayors, which would see mayoral strategic authorities move to simple majority voting, new integrated settlements, and widened transport powers. The government also intends to hand new development management powers to mayors, similar to those currently exercised by the Mayor of London, and to include the ability to call in planning applications of strategic importance. And in conjunction with these powers, mayors will be able to charge developers a mayoral levy to ensure that new developments come with the necessary associated infrastructure. In order to help boost house building, all areas will have to produce a spatial development strategy, the White Paper also added. Greater efficiencies will be introduced through the introduction of integrated settlements for mayoral authorities across the North and the West Midlands. And Helen, of course, as you know, the paper addressed far, far more than this, including covering standards and audit issues as well.
Well, that's right, Dennis. And we had to wait a little bit. I think standards appeared a good 100 pages in. But the government is to consult on the introduction of a national body to deal with the most serious standard cases and appeals, as was the case under the former system with the Standards Board for England. And indeed, we've just learned as we're recording that consultation is now out. So the move would be subject to discussions with the sector, according to the white paper, which within it, the government criticised the Localism Act for not providing councils with sufficient powers to maintain high standards. And it cited comments from local leaders who said that it was ineffectual, inconsistently applied, and lacking in adequate powers to sanction the small number of members who seriously breach codes of conduct. And of course, LLG has been calling for sanctions for a really long time now. So in fact, there was more proposals in the white paper than we were anticipating, because the government's going to consult on the following proposals in addition to the new national body, and that's going to be a mandatory code of conduct to establish a higher minimum standard of expected behaviours and ensure consistency. Obviously, at the moment, there's the LGA's code, but it's not mandatory to adopt. And this is going to reflect on the government's commitment, they say, to public service and to updating the 30-year code to cover discrimination, bullying, use of social media, and other issues which don't currently feature in the minimum requirements. They're also looking at a requirement for principal local authorities to convene formal standards committees. This, they say, is to ensure all local authorities have formal, transparent processes to uphold and promote standards. Of course, that provision went with the Localism Act. Many authorities do still utilise standards committees, but of course, there's no requirement at the moment. Then we get to the powers to suspend, and the government are looking at imposing premises and facilities bans to allow local authorities to enforce their own standards, because the government says it believes that councils need the ability to address serious misconduct, with power to suspend councillors for a maximum of 6 months, with the option to withhold allowances where deemed appropriate. Now, another sanction, which I certainly didn't see coming, I should say, is disqualification. And they're looking at disqualification if a councillor is subject to suspension more than once, with the intention to curb the risk of repeat offending and empower councils to signal that poor behaviour will not be tolerated. And that's subject to discussions with the sector. The government will explore immediate disqualification in certain instances of serious misconduct. They will also look at interim suspension whilst under investigation to reassure the public that action is being taken, which could be used in serious cases that may involve protracted investigations or the police, for example, matters such as fraud or an assault. And then they're discussing the publication of all code breach investigation outcomes to enhance transparency, which will give the public the opportunity to check their council's record on maintaining good conduct, and also what their council has been up to. So the government has said that in proposing such measures, it wanted to give the relevant authorities, quote, appropriate and proportionate means to deal with misconduct effectively and decisively when it does occur. And it also added that they want to ensure that victims can feel confident and safe when raising an issue under the Code of Conduct if it impacts them personally, breaches the Code of Conduct, or brings the council into disrepute. So the government says it will be embedding lessons learned from development of the Parliamentary Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme. Now let's turn to audit. The government also announced that it will legislate to radically simplify the local government audit system, bringing as many audit functions as possible into one body, which will also offer insights drawn from audits. Here, the government intends to engage with the sector shortly. I haven't seen whether that's incorporated in the consultation they've gone out on with today. And it's going to include key audit stakeholders to consider how best to move functions into the single organisation on audit and will be subject to further legislation. And that sounds a little bit like the old Audit Commission. Dennis, what reactions have you been picking up in relation to all these announcements?
Well, Helen, reactions have come thick and fast. Let's start with the LGA. Chair Councillor Louise Gitton said, "We want every council in England to be able to secure devolution that works for them, their local economies and their residents. While different areas will have strong views on what this should look like, genuine devolution of powers and resources can play a huge role," she said, "in promoting inclusive economic growth, creating jobs and improving public services." But she said in a very centralised country, moving funding and power from Whitehall to local leaders is needed, but it must be done in a way where councils and their communities are at the heart of decision making. Reform in this white paper, she said, will have a significant impact on every council and community. And she said, while our members are and always have been open to change, we remain clear that local government reorganisation should be a matter for councils and local areas to decide upon. Councillor Sam Chapman-Allen, chair of the District Councils Network, said communities in district areas are crying out as much as anyone for devolution, every bit as much as those in other parts of the country. So we passionately, they say, support the ambition shown by the government in seeking to make every area part of a combined authority. It is essential, he said, that district councils or a new form of highly localised unitary council are the building blocks of combined authorities, with voting rights within them. Localised delivery, expertise and understanding of local communities is the perfect counterbalance to the wide scale of the strategic bodies that are expected. District councils, he said, are close to communities, which makes them responsive, approachable, trusted and understanding of local needs. The danger is, of course, that all of this might be lost in a top-down imposition of mega councils, what amounts to regional rather than local government, covering many hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. And as he concludes, bigger isn't intrinsically better. Now, Councillor Tim Oliver, chairman of the County Councils Network, said, "Today's English devolution white paper provides a clear direction of travel on the future of local government in England. Building on positive progress on devolution to counties in recent years, it sets out a more ambitious framework of devolved powers and funding alongside an unambiguous desire for mayoral strategic authorities and local government reorganisation." And he went on, over recent years, a number of areas have successfully reorganised to create unitary authorities, while the creation of combined county authorities has provided a more suitable governance model for devolution in rural areas. And he concludes, the government has rightly committed to maintain this latter model and non-mayoral devolution options as well. And finally, from me on this, Helen, some comments from Florence Eshalomi, MP and chair of the Parliamentary Housing, Communities and Local Government Committee. She said, the proposed devolution reforms pose important questions around local representation and raise concerns that there will be a loss of voice for residents. Residents who choose not to adopt a mayoral model should not be disadvantaged, she said. The government should also set out what they will do to deliver proper accountability during the local government reorganisation itself, and to ensure that local communities receive the continuity of service they need. I think that echoes some of the comments others have said as well, Helen. But also our corporate partners have been quick to respond to all of this, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, Dennis. And of course, we had our LRG governance conference last week. And as you can imagine, there was lots and lots of conversations about devolution and what we were going to expect. But Armadip Gill, who's partner and head for public sector at Trowse and Hamlins, he said that the devolution white paper sets out the basis of a root and branch overhaul of governance in England, whilst articulating a bold vision for the future of devolution in England, primarily, as we've heard, through the establishment of strategic authorities. But the white paper does much more than just that, including the desire to reset the relationship between central and local government, enhance local oversight and audit, whilst also recognising the need to attract and retain talent in the sector. That's quite an important point, actually, because we know we've got a retention and recruitment and retention issue. And he went on, in addition to new governance structures that will result in two-tier areas and small or failing unitaries putting forward proposals for reorganisation, the aspiration for and he went on, in addition to new governance structures that will result in two-tier areas and small or failing unitaries putting forward proposals for reorganisation, the aspiration for economic growth is an underlying theme within the paper, including the mayoral strategic authorities overview of local growth plans and a national wealth fund aimed at unleashing the potential of cities and regions. Now, Peter Ware, who's the head of government at Brown Jacobson, he commented that the scale of the sweeping reforms chimes with the government's assertion this is a devolution revolution, which has the potential to transform local government into a simpler, more efficient system. And he says that the creation of strategic authorities and enhanced powers for elected mayors should ensure that every region has a seat at the table nationally, while also removing complexity and duplication in a system that has become a complicated patchwork of arrangements. If the general public and businesses have a better understanding of local government works, they will be more likely to engage with it. And I agree on that. I think education is the key, actually, to public sector engagement. And he goes on, although government will hope that the creation of strategic authorities will streamline local decision making, this won't automatically be the case and will require lots of work to ensure efficiencies are delivered. Local voices must also not become ignored, like with the updated national planning policy framework that establishes a state-led approach to new development. It's crucial that communities feel their views are heard in decisions affecting their lives. And I think that's very true. Finally, he said that district, borough and indeed all councils must therefore work hard when considering their proposals for local government reorganisation to ensure the localities currently covered by districts and boroughs are adequately represented in new unitary authorities, and that collaboration between new strategic authorities and their elected mayors will also be vital. In some cases, unitary councils and regional councils will be split across different geographies, as will some districts and boroughs. Claire Ward, partner and local government sector specialist at Anthony Collins, she said that the devolution white paper goes beyond anything that councils might have expected. It sets out a completely new way to deliver better outcomes for residents. She was clear that it creates a model for strategic authorities with unitary councils to deliver on the ground. And it's not just proposing a change to structures, but also considering where responsibility to deliver areas of competence should sit. And there is pace and ambition in the paper, which will be the biggest shake-up in local government for over 50 years. And I don't think anyone can disagree with that. So on that note, that's it for this special edition of the podcast. You can read more on all of this in the first bulletin of the new year, which goes out on the 10th of January, and we'll have far more detail and far more commentary. So until then, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, and all the very best for the new year, which is going to be clearly a very, very busy one for us at LLG, as well as our members.
Absolutely. So thank you for listening. Have a good rest of the week, everyone.